He was born under dark omens. A tiny boy in West London, Phil Collins grew up in a home that would unravel. His father, a hard-working insurance man, died suddenly when Phil was still a boy, a heart attack in 1972. And just as those innocent years were slipping away, his mother began to fall apart, racked by illness. The household was torn. Young Phil became an impromptu guardian to his two older siblings. The fluttering dreams of childhood were shadowed by loss. He escaped into music. A toy drum kit given at age 5 was like breathing life into his soul. And acting. On stage, he found momentary refuge from the tumult at home. He even played the artful Dodger in Oliver, in London's West End as a child. But when the curtain fell, the loneliness returned. By puberty, he had already tasted a spotlight, yet backstage waited confusion and melancholy. Every cheerful note he struck on the drums was a desperate attempt to drown out an emptiness within. As a teenager, Phil became a born storyteller behind the drum kit. He joined the prog rock band Genesis in 1970 as a shy 19-year-old replacement drummer, arriving in a world far bigger than himself. The other boys in Genesis, Peter Gabriel, Mike Rutherford, Tony Banks, taught him the rhythms of the road. He learned to fuse heavy rock with wonder, pounding out complex time signatures under the crackling stage lights. On vinyl and on tour, he was a curious presence, often smiling, but watching the madness of fame with cautious eyes. He found a kind of family in the band, but his bandmates were wild romantic visionaries, distant when he most needed them. In Genesis shows, he kept the heartbeat of songs like Foxtrot and Selling England by the Pound alive, even as his own world showed cracks. Away from the stage, the hallways of his houses, the villas he shared with his growing fame, felt hollow. At the crest of the 1970s, he stood behind his drums in pulsing British arenas, but inside he felt extraordinarily alone. When Peter Gabriel left Genesis in 1975, Phil Collins was suddenly yanked from the shadows and shoved into the limelight. The boy who once drummed behind Gabriel's flamboyant costumes now had the microphone thrust in front of him. The unexpected promotion left him dizzy with excitement and with terror. He became Genesis's lead singer practically overnight, inheriting the charisma that Gabriel had spent years building. The band's sound shifted too. Where Genesis had once been prog rock and theatrical, with Phil at the helm, they became tighter, punchier, wielding songs like Invisible Touch and Misunderstanding. On stage, Phil was electrifying, his quiet voice suddenly bellowing through massive PA systems, his intense eyes scanning the crowds. He banged on his drums with new fury, a glass-smashing drummer howling choruses to thousands in the dark. The success was intoxicating. He sang for sold-out stadiums. Genesis albums sold in the millions. But the mania of it all burned an ache in his chest. The kid who once acted in the wings now felt the impossibility of what he'd become. During quiet moments on tour buses and green rooms, he began to wonder what would happen when the drums finally fell silent. By the early 1980s, Phil Collins had transcended even Genesis. His solo career exploded from a wound of heartbreak. The title track of Face Value, 1981, his first album, leaked his pain when his first marriage collapsed. You could feel it in the air. He poured his anguish into every echoing drum fill and melodramatic lyric. The hit In the Air Tonight was raw and brooding, every beat a fist against the void. On stage, every song felt like a confession. Here, Phil Collins is caught in 1981, eyes closed, mouth open to let out a tortured cry. His youthful face is bathed in purple light, sweat traces paths down his temples. At that moment, he is invincible to the crowd, yet inside he is barely holding on. Fame had become a double-edged sword. By day, he was adored worldwide. By night, he drank himself to sleep to make the loneliness stop. Albums like Against All Odds and Susudio climbed the charts, making Phil a global phenomenon. Millions recognized his voice, a smooth British croon with a slight gruffness, and they adored the upbeat pop sound of Genesis's latest hits. The Grammys piled up, an Oscar followed for a Disney love song, and MTV cemented him as an 80s icon. Everywhere he went, people cheered and held up album covers. In those golden years, his face graced magazine covers and television, projecting brightness and warmth. Yet behind that megawatt grin, Phil's heart was crumbling. He was pulling of rock star poses, but his grip on life was slipping. The camera loved him. The silence at home questioned him. Fame's price was steep. His first wife, Andrea, had given him a son and an adopted daughter, Simon and Jolie, and then walked away after 5 years of marriage. The divorce left scars deeper than any drum solo. Soon after, Lily was born to his second wife, Jill, and Phil convinced himself this would be different, that this time he would be whole. Phil Collins gave what he called his last performance, singing seated on a stool, looking out at fans who had grown up with his music, but never saw him stand behind a kit again. The silence after the drums was deafening. Phil had spent almost every minute of his life hit by music, yet when the rhythm stopped, he still felt empty. He told interviewers it was like someone pulled the plug. "I've spent all my life playing drums," he sighed in a recent documentary. "To suddenly not be able to do that, it's a shock." The drums were his identity, and with them silenced he didn't know who he was. He even confided that occasionally he fantasized about writing himself out of this story. He pictured a scene where Phil Collins simply vanishes, and all people say is, "Oh, what a shame," then carry on. In the darkest times, he admitted he considered ending it, a quiet overdose in an antiseptic hotel rather than a burst of violence. But always, the thought of his children stopped him. "I wouldn't do that to my children," he said, his voice flat. So he continued on, each day surviving a little at a time, watching old videos of himself playing drums at frenetic speeds. He saw how young he was, how much energy once coursed through him, and he ached with loss. Away from the stage lights, his relationships frayed. His youngest sons played on football fields and drum kits of their own. Nicholas tours with Genesis as a drummer in his place. But they grew up largely on another continent. His daughter Lily, now a movie star, had memories of her father as half legend, half mystery. He later wrote in his memoir that their divorce had left her life hollow. The once pop star dad seemed a stranger with a heavy wallet, but distant ways. There were stories, maybe true, maybe rumor, of invitations unnoticed or support he never gave, of daughter weddings he didn't attend. "Dad has a different life," Lily recalled in an interview, eyes glistening. "I can't relate to him." That cut deeper than bankruptcy. Each missed holiday, each empty seat at the table, chipped away at whatever remained of the family bonds. On nights when the audience has left, and only the ghosts of cymbals remain, Phil Collins is alone with his ghosts. In recent interviews, he has often spoken in a whisper, looking weary. He admitted he's been very sick, that he woke up with no hunger to play music anymore. Sometimes he just lies in bed, watching shadows on the Swiss wall, wondering how the mighty have fallen. The boy who once dreamed in color now dreams in gray. He has said he feels as if his air miles have all flown out, that he used up everything that life gave him. The stage identity that once defined him is lost. The cheeky smile in videos, and the staccato laughter between songs have faded. Now there's just a quiet man carrying the echo of a great drum beat in his soul. In the end, the legacy of Phil Collins is tangled with heartbreak. The songs he gave to the world, some of its sweetest ballads and most famous pop hooks, are sung by others to this day. But he paid dearly for every note. Here is a rock star who could move arenas, a master of rhythm who could literally no longer stand, let alone drum. His voice, once strong and defiant, now cracks with fragility. Still, in a haze of sorrow and gratitude, he clings to the applause in his mind. He knows he left a mark on music, but he will always feel hollow under it. The legend's last drum beat fades into silence, and Phil Collins, the man behind it, is left whispering in the dark. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on to never miss a video.